Hello, my friends. A new episode. Today's hero or heroine is Ilse Hess, the eternal Nazi widow. She was the wife of the Führer Stellvertreter Rudolf Hess. Yeah, we can say, and this is invariably confirmed, that Hitler was drawn to women, and that women in turn were drawn to him. So this was also the case with this lady, Ilse Hess. Yeah, quite intellectual lady, we can say. In the previous episode, we spoke about his supporters, and naturally, we could only provide a selection. Supporters who supported Hitler with money, with introducing him to the better circles. Yes, making propaganda for him, a sort of marketing. Saying thanks to their sometimes very intense support in all what this means, not only financial, whether in a maternal role, so mother, like the mother role, maternal role, or as an enthusiastic admirer. There were different motivations for this woman. Hitler managed always to gain access through these women to the really influential circles, particularly among the German nationalist and conservative circles, elites who had the contacts with the important politicians, important figures in the Reichswehr, in the army after World War One, and also important decision maker in the economy world. Ultimately, it was precisely these circles, these conservative circles, I mentioned this again and again. This is underestimated that these circles, after the weakening of the social democrats in this Weimar political center, and we can say not only the social democrats, but the democratical center altogether, these circles passed the baton to Hitler and helped him bring him to power. Yeah, without these circuits, Hitler would never come in January 33 to power. It is very clear. The consolidation of this process was decisively aided by the legendary Chancellor Gustav Stresemann. Yeah, he was a legend. He was considered in Germany the greatest statesman of the Weimar Republic times in the 20s. Stresemann came from the ranks of the conservative DVP, Deutsche Volkspartei, German People's Party. So quite from the center he entered. He was not a really classical left-wing agitator. As Chancellor in 1923, he put an end to the conflict in the Rhineland and Ruhr regions, and introduced perhaps the most important economic reform, this new stable currency, the Rentenmark. Yeah, we had a big inflation in Germany. Everybody knows the story about the brutal inflation, where you paid a milliard of marks for I don't know, for a kilo bread. Unfortunately, he was unable to achieve the liberation of the Rhineland because Rhineland was under French and Belgian control, or further reduce Germany's reparation obligations. They were very hard on Germany. After a change of the government in France, the so-called rapprochement, to getting nearer between the two countries, Germany and French, there were like a friendly atmosphere created. And for this friendly atmosphere, for the creation of this new friendly atmosphere about after World War I, when we had so many millions of deads, Stresemann, together with his French foreign minister Aristide Briand, received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1926. And then this rapprochement came to a halt once again. Nevertheless, he succeeded in restoring Germany's equal status among European states, the Roaring Twenties, So that was also a success period, a period of economic, artistic, cultural, and scientific boom, as well as Germany's renewed foreign policy, were all in part due to his achievements. For this reason, the period is also named after Stresemann. Yet even on the streets, the Weimar Republic was not defenseless, as many people think. They had also their own paramilitary organization. And the paramilitary organization defending the Weimar Republic, the Reichsbanner, had 3 million members. It was larger than all nationalist paramilitary groups combined. But it was not so aggressive. That's also true. Nevertheless, anti-republican forces prevailed, partly thanks to the involvement of numerous women, and one of them we shall meet today. This is, yes, Ilse Hess. In the following episodes, we will focus then on other younger women like Eva Braun and so on. But today's story is all around Ilse Hess, the wife of Rudolf Hess, Hitler's deputy, the Führer Stellvertreter. After the fall of the Third Reich, she received the title I chose as a title for our episode of her own. She was called the Eternal Nazi Widow. Yeah, she was the widow because when Hess died in the late 80s, she was alive, still living up to 1995 as the Nazi widow. And when he was imprisoned, she was like a sort of a widow after World War II. Ilse Hess was born as Ilse Pröhl on June 22 in 1900 in Hanover. So she was from the north of Germany and not from the region of Munich or Bavaria. Hitler in the beginning chose all his friends, all his sympathies from the Munich circle. But she studied in Munich, so she became such a sort of Munich person. Yes, and as I said, in Hanover, and she was the wife of the National Socialist politic Rudolf Hess, as we said, who served in Berlin-Spandau until to the late 80s. In the 1980s, in 1983, I personally saw the prison from outside because we visited the prison where he was incarcerated in Berlin-Spandau, like with our school class, with our teacher. Yeah, after the Second World War, Ilse became known as an author. She published books. She published, for example, her correspondence with her imprisoned husband Rudolf Hess. They were writing a lot of letters. They were not communicating another way. He wanted it like that only communication via letters. Following the war, she led a campaign for her husband's release, which contributed to the creation of martyr legend within all the international neo-Nazi circles. Yeah, people believed in Rudolf Hess as an example of a good Nazi. Even in Spain, for example, neo-Nazi metal bands sang songs such as Prisionero de la Paz, the prisoner of peace, or Peregrino de la Paz, the pilgrim of peace, and so like that. Ilse Pröhl came from a national conservative family. She was one of the 3 daughters of Friedrich Pröhl, a wealthy Hanoverian physician, and his wife Elsa, born Meinecke. Her father was killed during the Kapp Putsch, so that was the first experience she had with the brutal atmosphere, the brutality after World War I. In March 1920, the Freikorps unit known as the Erhard Brigade, which was led by the naval brigade commander Hermann Erhard, with swastikas on their helmet, they led the uprising or coup d'état, led official by the politicians the national politician Wolfgang Kapp and the General Walter von Littwitz. So also the army was involved. They seized power in Berlin only for 5 days. The Kapp data failed, and during the brigade's retreat, the brigade carried out a sort of a massacre, firing into crowds of protesters. Yeah, because they laughed in front of the Brandenburger Tor in the center of Berlin. The crowd began to making jokes about them, like they are losers and so on. The soldiers repeated with fire. Ilse Hess' father was killed in this fighting as one of the Freikorps national warriors. The brigade's commander, Hermann Erhard, lived after World War II undisturbed in Austria's Waldviertel region up until his death in 1971, a region northern to Vienna. Yeah, it's interesting, I don't know if coincidence or not, Adolf Hitler's family is originated from this region, Waldviertel. Yeah, that was the Arab Brigade. At that time, Adolf Hitler was still unknown in Germany at 1920, and his movement remained a marginal phenomenon. It was a little group. The part was founded, and Hitler was only a speaker, and then only later on he became the Führer. The coup failed because the population went on a general strike, and later army generals dared not to take over, not dare to seize power, because they always feared that the population would respond with a general strike. It is striking that time and again we find that most of these women came really from this national conservative background, also involved with Freikorps, with fathers who were involved in activity of these Freikorps units. In some cases, such as that of Ilse Hess, their families were directly involved in uprising and so on. Yeah, when you now look at the old photographs of the Erhard Naval Brigade from 1920, and you see them wearing helmets with swastikas, you see there the kinship with the newly founded NSDAP unmistakable. What will this say to us? It will say that the NSDAP was at that time not alone. There were rival national socialist in movements very similar to the NSDAP. But Hitler, he had an idea not to cooperate, he wanted to incorporate the others. So not to cooperate with the others, but I want to be the strongest movement, and all other national conservative movements have to join me. That was the idea. That was really the success story, maybe also from Hitler, that he was in this risking a lot, not cooperating. I want to be the strongest movement of all national conservative movements. Yeah, as we say, the tactics of Hitler was incorporation, and one who helped him was Ernst Röhm, the commander of the paramilitary SR organization, who had the connections with the army leaders and he was a respected fighter also from the other organization of the Freikorps. Yeah, and in April 1920, Ilse Pröhl was studying German and library science in Munich on the Ludwig Maximilian University, LMU in Munich, and there she met Rudolf Hess, who since 1919 were studying history and economics at the same university. She was among the very first women ever allowed to study at that university. Also that we have to say. In 1921, she was one of the first members of the new founded NSDAP. She was one of the really earliest, not only female members, but altogether also one of the earliest because the party was founded in 1920.